If this story reminds you that one act of kindness can change a life forever, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe to Kindness Hub for more heartwarming stories that celebrate compassion and second chances. The first thing Elara Venn noticed that morning was the silence, not the peaceful kind of silence that comes with sunrise, but the heavy, frightening silence that follows bad news. Her phone screen glowed in the dim light of her tiny apartment kitchen. 3 missed calls from her mother. 2 unpaid bill reminders. 1 text message from her younger brother asking if everything would be okay. At 28 years old, Elara had become the person everyone depended on. Ever since her father suffered a severe stroke 8 months earlier, life had turned into a constant race against time and money. Between hospital visits, medication costs, rent payments, and helping her brother finish college, she barely had enough energy left to think about herself. That morning, she learned that the neighborhood cafe where she worked had closed permanently. No warning. No final paycheck. No backup plan. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at the text from her manager while the weight of uncertainty settled onto her shoulders. How long could she keep pretending to be strong? How many more problems could one person carry before they finally broke? She wiped away the tears threatening to fall, took a deep breath, and stood up, because when people depend on you, giving up isn't an option. An hour later, her phone rang again. It was her cousin Morel, who worked at the prestigious Haven Crest Hotel downtown. One of their receptionists had called in sick, and they needed someone to fill in for the day. The pay wasn't much, but it was something. Elara said yes before her cousin even finished explaining. By noon, she found herself standing inside the grand marble lobby of Haven Crest Hotel, feeling completely out of place. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Fresh flowers decorated every corner. Guests rolled expensive luggage across polished floors while staff members moved with practiced confidence. Elara adjusted the borrowed navy blazer that hung slightly loose on her shoulders and reminded herself that this was only temporary. Just one day. One day to earn enough money to buy her father's medication. Morel quickly showed her the basics of the front desk system before rushing off to handle another task. The afternoon crowd began arriving: business travelers, families on vacation, couples celebrating anniversaries. Most guests barely looked at her. A few were impatient. One man complained about waiting 3 minutes for his room key, another snapped at her because his suite wasn't on a higher floor. By 4 o'clock, her feet hurt, her head pounded, and her confidence was fading. Maybe she wasn't cut out for places like this. Maybe some people simply belonged in different worlds. Then, just as the afternoon sun streamed through the lobby windows, a man walked through the revolving doors carrying a worn leather duffel bag. He didn't look like the hotel's usual guests. His dark jacket was simple. His hair was slightly messy from travel. There was exhaustion in his eyes, the kind that sleep alone couldn't fix. Unlike everyone else, he wasn't staring at his phone. He looked around quietly, as though searching for something he'd lost long ago. When he reached the front desk, he offered a small, tired smile. For the first time all day, someone looked at Elara like she was a person instead of an employee. She returned the smile. His name was Corwin Hale. She found his reservation and noticed he had booked a standard room instead of one of the hotel's luxury suites. Everything about him seemed ordinary, but when she glanced at his address, she realized he had traveled across the country. "You've had a long trip," she said gently. "Would you like a bottle of water before heading up?" The surprise on his face made her wonder if no one had asked him such a simple question in a very long time. He thanked her sincerely. While preparing his room key, Elara noticed him rubbing his temples. Without thinking, she told him the hotel cafe stayed open late and served homemade soup that guests loved after long flights. It was a small gesture. A simple moment of kindness. But something shifted in his expression. As if her words had reached a place inside him that had been lonely for years. After he left, Elara continued helping guests, never imagining that brief interaction would change everything. An hour later, an elderly guest became dizzy near the elevators. Panic spread quickly through the lobby. Without hesitation, Elara rushed over. Months of helping care for her father had taught her how to stay calm during emergencies. She helped the woman sit down, called for medical assistance, and stayed by her side until paramedics arrived. The elderly guest's daughter cried with relief. Several guests quietly thanked her, but Elara simply returned to the front desk and continued working. kindness had become second nature to her. She didn't know that someone had witnessed everything. From the second-floor balcony overlooking the lobby, Corwin Hale watched in silence that he saw the way she comforted frightened guests, the way she smiled despite carrying her own invisible burdens, the way she treated every person with dignity. For the first time in months, he felt something he hadn't expected, hope. That evening, as Elara prepared to end her shift, Morel rushed toward her with wide eyes. The hotel manager wanted to see her immediately. Her stomach dropped. Had she made a mistake? Was she being fired after only one day? She walked nervously into the manager's office and froze. Corwin Hale sat beside the manager. The exhausted traveler from earlier no longer looked ordinary. His posture was different now. Confident. Commanding. The manager stood quickly. "Elara, I'd like you to meet Mr. Hale properly." Confusion washed over her. The manager continued. "Mr. Hale owns Havencrest Hotels." Her heart nearly stopped. The quiet traveler she'd checked in was the Millionaire, founder of one of the country's fastest-growing hospitality companies. Corwin smiled gently. "You treated me with more kindness in 5 minutes than most people have shown me in years." Elara couldn't find words. That he explained that he often traveled anonymously between properties to understand how guests were truly treated. Most employees focused on appearances, some ignored guests they assumed weren't wealthy, others performed kindness only when supervisors were watching. But Elara had been different, not because she knew who he was, because she didn't, because her compassion was genuine. She lowered her eyes, embarrassed by the attention. "It's just how my parents raised me." Corwin noticed the exhaustion behind her smile. That he asked about her life. At first, she hesitated, then, for reasons she couldn't explain, she told the truth, about losing her job, about her father's stroke, about the bills she couldn't keep up with, about the fear she carried every night. Corwin listened without interrupting, not with pity, with understanding, because years earlier, before building his company, he had stood exactly where she stood now, afraid, overwhelmed. One unexpected act of kindness had changed his life back then. Now he wanted to do the same for someone else. That he offered Elara a full-time position at Havencrest Hotel with benefits, training opportunities, and flexible hours that would allow her to care for her father. She stared at him in disbelief. It felt impossible. Like something that only happened in movies. But Corwin wasn't finished. The company also had an employee assistance program that could help cover part of her father's rehabilitation costs. For the first time in months, Elara cried without trying to hide it, not because she was sad, because someone had finally seen her struggle, someone had reminded her that she didn't have to carry everything alone. The following months transformed her life. Her father began receiving better treatment, her brother graduated from college. Elara discovered she had a natural talent for hospitality. Guests remembered her warmth, coworkers admired her dedication. She brought humanity into every interaction because she understood that everyone carries unseen battles. As for Corwin, he continued visiting hotels anonymously, but now, whenever he spoke to managers about exceptional service, he never mentioned profits or ratings. He talked about Elara, the temporary receptionist who changed the culture of an entire company simply by caring. A year later, Elara stood in the same lobby where she'd once felt so out of place, only now, she wore a name badge that read Guest Relations Manager. The chandeliers still sparkled overhead, the marble floors still gleamed. But she no longer felt like she didn't belong, because she had learned something important. True wealth isn't measured by bank accounts. It's measured by the kindness we offer when we think nobody important is watching. Sometimes, the person standing in front of us is carrying a burden we cannot see. Sometimes, the smallest act of compassion becomes the turning point in someone's story, and sometimes, the life we change ends up being our own. Before we finish this story, we have a special request. Comment below with the words, "Kindness changes everything." Let's fill this community with hope and remind each other that compassion still exists in the world. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Hub. Your support helps us share more inspiring stories that remind people they are never alone, because somewhere today, someone is holding on by a thread, and your kindness might be the reason they keep going.